大家好，我是 Jenny， 欢迎来到沉思者 J。今天我们要认识一个人，他留下的作品是联合国教科文组织认定的世界遗产，他影响了全世界每一座现代城市的面貌，但他同时也是史上最具争议的建筑师之一。有人说他是天才，有人说他是恶魔，他就是柯比意。如果你住过或看过高楼公寓大厦，如果你曾走过有带状横窗的现代建筑，如果你曾在一栋四方形的白色建筑前停下来，那你很可能已经在不知不觉中活在柯比意的世界里了。让我们从一个小镇讲起。1887年10月6日，瑞士西北部有个小镇叫做拉绍德峰。这个镇很特别，整个镇就像一块巨大的棋盘，街道整齐划一，建筑排列有序。拉绍德峰因制表业闻名全球，是个讲究精密与秩序的地方。就在这里，一个叫做夏尔·爱德华·让·讷雷格里的男孩出生了。这个名字很长，大家后来都叫他柯比意，那是他自己取的笔名。他的父亲是钟表釉面师傅，母亲是钢琴老师，家里不算富裕，但充满艺术气息。柯比意从小就对绘画有天赋，13岁进入拉绍德峰当地的艺术学校，原本只是要学习表面雕刻技艺，没想到他的校长看出了他更大的潜力，对他说了一句改变命运的话。校长说，你不该做表面，你应该去学建筑。就这样，一个年轻人的人生轨迹改变了。柯比意没有念过正式的建筑学校，他靠的是旅行和自学。20多岁时，他展开了一段漫长的旅行，先去意大利，再去希腊，去巴黎，去德国。他拼命速写，拼命观察，拼命思考。旅行是他的大学，眼睛是他的老师。在旅行途中，他做了一件事让人印象深刻。他去了希腊的帕德嫩神庙，那是古希腊最完美的建筑之一。柯比意在神庙前站了很久很久，他说那是他一生中最震撼的时刻之一。他相信伟大的建筑有一种超越时代的力量，它不仅仅是石头和柱子的组合，它是一种让人灵魂震颤的存在。他后来写到，纯粹是建筑的灵魂，这个信念成为他一生创作的核心。他在德国也停留了一段时间，在那里他接触到了德意志工艺联盟的理念。这个组织主张艺术应该与工业结合，好的设计应该进入每个人的日常生活，不只是为富人服务。这个想法深深打动了他，他开始思考建筑的社会责任。建筑应该让所有人都住得好，不只是让少数人住得漂亮。他在巴黎待了一段时间，在那里接触到了钢筋混凝土技术，这个材料让他着迷，他觉得这是改变世界的工具。传统建筑用石头和砖块，厚重、沉闷，受限于材料的本质，但钢筋混凝土不一样，它可以做柱子，可以做楼板，可以让建筑漂浮在地面上，可以让墙壁变薄，可以让光线自由穿透。他后来说，混凝土是他的大理石，这种材料既粗犷又细腻，既坚硬又可塑。他用混凝土书写了整个20世纪的建筑史。柯比意在脑子里开始构建一套新的建筑哲学，钢筋混凝土让他看到了一个全新的可能性。他开始大量阅读工程学的书籍，他跑到建筑工地去观察，他和工程师交朋友，他想搞清楚这个材料能做什么，不能做什么，它的极限在哪里，它的诗意又在哪里。1914年，他提出了一个叫做多米诺体系的结构概念。这个概念非常革命性，简单说就是用独立的柱子支撑楼板，墙壁完全解放，不再承重，墙可以随意开窗，可以随意移动。这个想法看起来简单，但它彻底打破了几千年来建筑的基本逻辑。然后到了1926年，柯比意整理出他最著名的建筑理论，他称之为现代建筑五要点。第一点是底层架空，建筑要站在柱子上，让地面保持开放，让人可以自由穿行。第二点是屋顶花园，传统建筑的屋顶浪费了，应该把屋顶变成花园，补偿建筑占用的地面绿地。第三点是自由平面， 因为柱子承重，墙壁不必承重，所以室内空间可以自由分隔，不受结构束缚。第4点是带状横窗，墙壁自由了，窗户就可以水平延伸，让光线大量进入，让视野更开阔。第5点是自由立面，同样的道理，建筑的外墙可以自由设计，不受结构限制。这5个要点就是现代建筑的 DNA， 直到今天仍然统治着全球的建筑设计。让我用一个更具体的方式说明这5个要点的革命性。在柯比意之前，你去看一栋典型的欧洲建筑，外墙是砖砌的，厚重，开窗受到严格限制，因为墙壁在承重，挖掉太多就垮了，所以窗户都是直立的，窄的，光线只能从有限的角度进来，室内往往昏暗，楼层之间靠厚重的楼梯连接，地面是封闭的，建筑紧紧贴着地面，像个沉重的盒子。柯比意的5要点改变了这一切，建筑从地面解放出来，光线从四面八方涌入，空间变得自由流动。这不只是美学的改变，这是一种对人的生活方式的根本重新想象。如果说理论是柯比意的剑，那他的作品就是他挥剑的姿态。1928年到1931年间，他在巴黎近郊普瓦西建造了萨伏伊别墅，这栋别墅是他5要点的完美示范。白色的立方体漂浮在柱子上，带状横窗环绕四周，屋顶上是花园，室内螺旋坡道引导人在空间中移动。萨伏伊别墅后来成为20世纪最重要的建筑之一，是每个建筑系学生都必须朝圣的地方。但柯比意不只想盖一栋漂亮的别墅，他有更大的野心，他想改造整个城市。1925年，他提出了一个震惊世界的计划，叫做瓦赞计划。他的构想是什么？他要拆掉巴黎塞纳河右岸的大部分历史街区，然后建造18栋60层高的十字形摩天大楼，每栋大楼之间保留大片绿地，道路笔直宽阔，行人与车辆完全分层。这个计划在当时引发了轩然大波，反对者说他疯了，说他要把巴黎变成工厂，说他根本不懂人性，说他要消灭历史。柯比意不为所动，他说现代城市就应该是这样的，高密度、高效率，有充足的阳光和绿地。他说这才是让人类健康生活的正确方式。这个对立延续了柯比意的一生，也延续到了他去世之后。接下来我们要讲一个更具争议的故事。2次大战结束后，法国百废待兴，大量工人家庭需要住房，政府找上了柯比意，请他设计一种可以大量复制的集合住宅。柯比意把这个机会当成了实验场，他在马赛设计了一栋建筑，叫做马赛公寓，1952年落成。这栋建筑高达17层，容纳了337户家庭，设计理念非常超前，每户都有穿透式的户型，室内有小型客厅和厨房，建筑中层有商店街，屋顶有游泳池，有托儿所，有健身场所。柯比意把它设计成一个垂直的小城市。当时的建设部长热纳维耶夫塔布瓦是少数真正支持柯比意的政治人物，他顶住了各方的批评和压力，让这栋建筑得以完成。他后来说这是他政治生涯中最自豪的决定之一。今天的马赛公寓已经成为一个文化地标，居民以住在这里为荣，建筑系的学生从全世界飞来参观，屋顶上的跑道上每天都有人在晨跑。这栋建筑活了下来，而且越活越有生命力。在当时这个概念是划时代的，人们第一次看到集合住宅可以有如此丰富的公共空间。但问题也在这里慢慢浮现。马赛公寓的设计师是天才柯比意，预算是充裕的，施工品质是受到监控的，居民是精心选择的，这个社区相对运作良好。然而当这个模式被政府和开发商大规模复制，情况就完全不一样了。50年代到70年代，欧洲各国开始大量新建高楼住宅，粗糙复制柯比意的概念，高密度、高楼层，但没有了充足的公共空间，没有了商业设施， 没有了社区活动，这些建筑成了所谓的平民塔，成了社会问题的集中地，犯罪率高，社区感薄弱，居民疏离。1972年，美国密苏里州的圣路易斯市炸毁了一个叫做普鲁特伊戈的大型公屋项目。这个项目正是依照柯比意的理念设计的，它的失败被许多建筑评论家称为现代主义建筑的死亡。公正地说，柯比意并不是这些失败的唯一责任人，那些粗制滥造的复制品远远背离了他原本的设计精神。他从未说要消除社区的温度，他从未说要把人关在冰冷的混凝土箱子里。但问题是，一个理论一旦进入世界，就不再完全属于提出者，它会被误读，被滥用，被政治和资本的力量扭曲。柯比意的理念就是这样的命运。让我们把时间线稍微往前跳一跳。1950年，印度发生了一件大事。刚独立的印度需要在旁遮普地区建一座新首府。印度政府邀请了柯比意，给了他一个几乎是空白的画布，从零开始设计一座全新的城市。这座城市叫做昌迪加尔，这是柯比意一生中最宏大的城市规划实验。他设计了整个城市的路网，设计了政府建筑群，设计了高等法院，设计了议会大厦，设计了行政长官官邸。这些建筑至今仍然矗立在昌迪加尔，雄浑壮丽，粗犷有力，是他晚期风格的代表作。他在这个时期放弃了早年的白色光滑表面，改用清水混凝土的原始质感，让材料本身说话，让阳光在粗糙的表面上投下丰富的阴影。这种风格后来被称为粗野主义，在全世界产生了广泛的影响。很多人看到这些建筑的第一反应是震惊，巨大、沉重、充满力量。第二反应才是理解，才慢慢看出它的诗意和逻辑。但居民怎么看呢？有些人觉得生活在这座城市很奇怪，街道太宽、太热，行人走路困难，一切都依照汽车的逻辑设计，而不是人的逻辑。这恰恰是柯比意最常被批评的一点。他太爱秩序，太爱效率，太爱宏大的视角，却有时候忽略了城市是给人住的。人需要街角的小店，需要可以闲逛的小巷，需要偶遇邻居的地方，需要那些看似凌乱却充满生命力的角落。有一个城市规划学家叫做简雅各，他写了一本书叫做《美国大城市的死与生》。他的核心论点就是对现代主义城市规划的批判。他认为多样性才是城市的生命力所在，功能混合的街道，不同年代的建筑并存，高密度的人口，短小的街廓，这些才是一个有活力的城市应该具备的要素。简雅各和柯比意代表了两种截然不同的城市哲学。这场论战从20世纪延续到今天，依然没有最终的答案。现在让我们回到柯比意这个人本身。他是一个非常复杂的人。在艺术上，他不只是建筑师，他也是画家。他一生创作了超过1万幅绘画和素描。他和毕卡索是同时代人，深受立体主义影响。他发展出一种叫做纯粹主义的绘画风格，追求几何形式的纯净。他画的是日常物件，瓶子、杯子、吉他、书本，但他把这些物件提炼成最本质的几何形状，去掉所有装饰，去掉所有多余的细节，只留下纯粹的形式。他说绘画训练了他的眼睛，让他看到事物背后的本质结构。这种思维方式也深刻影响了他的建筑设计。他的建筑和他的画作有着同样的语言，纯净、稽核、理性，但又充满诗意。他也是家具设计师，他设计的躺椅和扶手椅至今仍是现代设计的经典，在世界各地的设计博物馆里都可以看到。他最著名的家具设计之一叫做长椅，造型流畅优雅，使用钢管作为结构，外附皮革。这把椅子至今仍然生产，仍然是许多设计师和收藏家梦寐以求的物件。他认为家具和建筑是同一件事的不同尺度，都是为人的生活服务的工具，都应该追求形式与功能的完美统一。他更是城市规划家，是作家， 是理论家，他写了大量的文章和书籍，最著名的一本叫做《迈向建筑》，出版于1923年。书里有一句话震惊了当时所有的读书人，他说建筑或革命，革命是可以避免的。他相信好的建筑可以改变社会，可以让穷人住得有尊严，可以让城市变得更公平。这个信念是真诚的，但他的方法往往是独断的。他很少听取居民的意见，他相信自己知道什么对人们最好。这种态度被批评者称为建筑师的傲慢。他的私人生活也充满矛盾。他有一段长达20多年的婚姻，妻子叫做伊芙琳·加利斯，外号叫做伊芙。她是一位时装模特儿，出生在摩纳哥，个性爽朗，喜欢开玩笑，和柯比意严肃克制的公众形象形成了有趣的对比。朋友们说他是让柯比意真正放松下来的唯一一个人。他能让这个满脑子建筑的男人笑起来，能让他暂时忘记那些宏大的计划和激烈的论战。柯比意对他深情款款，但他长期在外旅行和工作，两人聚少离多。1957年，伊芙因病去世，柯比意受到很大的打击。此后他变得更加沉默，更加孤僻。1965年8月27日，77岁的柯比意在法国南部的小镇罗克布吕纳卡普马丹去海边游泳，那是他每天早晨的习惯。那天早晨他没有回来，人们在海边找到了他，他的心脏停止了跳动，一个时代就这样在海水中静静结束了。法国政府为他举行了国葬，全世界的建筑师为他默哀。他的遗体安葬在他为自己设计的小别墅旁，在普罗旺斯的阳光下。今天我们怎么看柯比意？他的建筑理念改变了全世界。现代城市的样貌，高层住宅，带状横窗，开放式楼板，底层架空，这些元素几乎无处不在。2016年，他的17件作品被联合国教科文组织列为世界文化遗产。这17件作品分布在7个国家，包括法国、印度、日本、阿根廷、比利时、德国和瑞士。这是建筑史上前所未有的记录，但它也留下了争议。他的城市规划理念被指责为忽视人性。他晚年被发现曾与法西斯政权有过接触。在2次大战期间，他短暂为西法国政府服务，试图推行他的城市改造计划。尽管后来他离开了，这段历史依然是他的污点。历史学家对这段往事有不同的解读。有人说他是机会主义者，只要能实现自己的建筑理念，和谁合作都无所谓。有人说他是天真的理想主义者，相信自己的计划可以改善穷人的生活，不管政府是什么颜色。真相可能介于两者之间，但无论如何，这段历史提醒我们，一个人的艺术才华和他的道德判断力是完全不同的两件事。我们可以欣赏他的建筑，同时保持对他的批判距离。一个人可以同时是天才和罪人吗？一个伟大的理念可以带来伤害吗？答案恐怕是肯定的。柯比意让我们看到了一件重要的事：当一个人的知识能量超乎寻常强大，当他的构想足以改变世界的面貌，他所承担的责任也是超乎寻常沉重的，因为他的错误也是超乎寻常巨大的。这个世界需要柯比意这样的人，敢于打破旧有框架，敢于提出激进的构想，敢于把理念付诸实践。但这个世界也需要质疑柯比意的声音，提醒我们城市不只是机器，建筑不只是效率，人不只是需要阳光和绿地的生物，人还需要那些无法量化的东西：街角的温度，邻里的情谊，记忆和故事在砖墙上的积累。他说住宅是居住的机器，但人类不只是机器的使用者，我们是有灵魂的居住者。我们在空间里生活，也在空间里爱，也在空间里悲伤，也在空间里寻找意义。柯比意最终的遗产，不是那些白色的建筑，不是那些宽阔的道路，而是他留给我们的这个问题：我们究竟想要什么样的城市？我们究竟想要什么样的生活？这个问题今天比任何时候都更加迫切。 全球城市化的速度仍在加快，亚洲和非洲的城市正在以惊人的速度成长，每年有数以百万计的人从农村移入城市，每一栋新建的建筑，每一条新开辟的道路，都是一个选择，都是一个关于我们想要什么样的生活的答案。柯比意告诉我们建筑可以改变人，简雅各告诉我们人也可以改变建筑。真理或许就在这两个声音的对话之中，在秩序与自由之间，在效率与温度之间，在宏大的愿景与街角的温情之间，找到那个让人类真正繁荣的平衡点。这个问题没有标准答案，但每一代人都必须认真面对它。感谢你今天跟 Jenny 一起思考了这个重要的问题。如果你喜欢这个节目，请帮我们按赞订阅，把这集分享给你的朋友。我们下次见咯。Hello everyone, I am Jenny. Welcome to Thinker J. Today I want to introduce you to someone extraordinary. His works are recognized as UNESCO World Heritage sites. He shaped the face of almost every modern city on the planet, and he remains one of the most controversial architects in history. Some call him a genius, others call him a disaster. His name is Le Corbusier. Think about the city you live in or the cities you have visited. Think about the glass and concrete towers that define so many skylines. Think about the apartment blocks that house millions of people around the world. Think about the wide roads, the separated pedestrian walkways, the buildings elevated on columns. Think about the flat-roofed, white-walled, geometrically precise buildings that populate architectural magazines and design textbooks. All of these things trace back, in some fundamental way, to one man and his ideas. Le Corbusier did not invent all of these things from nothing, but he articulated them with such force, such clarity, and such sheer conviction that he made them the dominant language of 20th century architecture. He gave the modern city its grammar. And like all powerful ideas, his came with consequences he could not fully control or foresee. If you have ever lived in or looked at a modern apartment block, there is a very real chance that building owes something to this man. If you have ever walked past a building with long horizontal windows that stretch across the entire facade, that is his influence. If you have ever stopped to admire a clean, white, geometric building floating on slender columns, that aesthetic traces back to him. We are surrounded by his ideas. We live inside his vision. Most of us just do not know it yet. Let me take you back to the very beginning. On October 6, 1887, a boy was born in a small Swiss town called La Chaux-de-Fonds in the Jura Mountains. This town was genuinely unusual. The entire settlement had been rebuilt after a catastrophic fire in 1794, and when it was reconstructed, the planners laid it out like a giant chessboard. Streets ran perfectly straight and parallel. Buildings were arranged with mathematical precision. La Chaux-de-Fonds was world famous for its watchmaking industry, and everything about the town reflected that obsession with precision and order. It was a place where craft, measurement, and beauty existed together as a single idea. And it was here that a boy named Charles-Édouard Généric Gris came into the world. That name is quite a mouthful. The world would later know him simply as Le Corbusier. That was a pen name he invented for himself, derived from the name of a distant ancestor. He adopted it in 1920 when he began writing for an architecture journal, and it stuck for the rest of his life. His father was a craftsman who applied enamel decoration to watch faces. His mother was a piano teacher. The family was not wealthy, but their home was filled with music, art, and a deep love of the handmade. Le Corbusier showed extraordinary talent for drawing from a very early age. At 13, he enrolled at the local art school in La Chaux-de-Fonds. He was originally there to learn the craft of watch face engraving, following in the footsteps of his father. But his school director, a visionary educator named Charles Aplatnier, saw something much bigger in this quiet, intense young man. Aplatnier pulled him aside one day and told him directly that he should not be making watch faces. He should be studying architecture. That single conversation changed the direction of a life. Le Corbusier never attended a formal school of architecture. What he had instead was an insatiable curiosity, extraordinary visual intelligence, and a willingness to travel and observe relentlessly. In his early 20s, he set out on what he later called the journey to the East. He traveled through Central Europe, the Balkans, Turkey, and Greece. He sketched constantly. He filled notebook after notebook with drawings of buildings, details, proportions, and spatial relationships. He was not just recording what he saw. He was trying to understand why certain things were beautiful and others were not. He was searching for underlying principles that transcended any single culture or historical period. One moment from this journey stayed with him for the rest of his life. He climbed up to the Acropolis in Athens and stood before the Parthenon. He later described this as one of the most overwhelming experiences of his existence. He stood there for a long time, just looking. He was struck not by ornament or decoration, but by something more fundamental. The way the columns related to each other. The way light fell across the surfaces at different times of day. The way the entire structure felt mathematically inevitable, as if it could not have been built any other way. He came away from Athens believing that great architecture expressed something eternal and universal, not just something culturally specific. He wrote afterward that pure form was the soul of architecture. This conviction became the foundation of everything he did. In Germany, he encountered the Deutscher Werkbund, a progressive organization that believed art and industry should work together. The Werkbund argued that well-designed objects should be available to everyone, not just the wealthy. Good design was a democratic right, not an aristocratic luxury. This idea resonated deeply with Le Corbusier. It began to give his architectural ambitions a social and moral dimension. Architecture was not just about beauty. Architecture was about justice. About giving all people, regardless of their income, the right to live in well-designed spaces filled with light and air. Then came Paris. And in Paris came the encounter that changed everything. He met reinforced concrete. He had heard about this material before, but in Paris he saw what it could actually do in the hands of engineers who truly understood it. Reinforced concrete was extraordinary. Traditional masonry buildings used stone and brick, materials that were heavy, compressive, and constrained by their own nature. Walls had to be thick. Openings had to be small. The building had to sit solidly on the earth. But reinforced concrete was different in every fundamental way. You could pour it into almost any shape. You could use it to make slender columns that carried enormous loads. You could create floor slabs that seemed to float in midair. You could free the walls from carrying any structural burden whatsoever. You could let light pour through in ways that masonry construction made impossible. Le Corbusier later said that concrete was his marble. That raw, honest material, at once rough and refined, became the medium through which he would write the architectural history of the 20th century. He began to construct a new philosophy of architecture, reading voraciously about engineering, visiting construction sites, befriending structural engineers, pushing constantly at the boundaries of what the material could do. In 1914, he proposed a structural concept he called the domino system. The name was a combination of the Latin word for house and the game of dominoes, because the schematic drawings of the system looked like dominoes standing in a row. The concept was elegantly simple and completely revolutionary. Instead of walls carrying the floors and roof, a grid of slender reinforced concrete columns would do the job. The floors would be flat concrete slabs, connected to the columns at the edges. The walls would be freed entirely from any structural responsibility. They could be placed anywhere, designed any way, opened up with windows of any shape or size, or removed altogether. This simple diagram shattered thousands of years of architectural logic in a single stroke. And it gave Le Corbusier the conceptual tool he needed to build his entire career upon. He spent the following decade refining these ideas, and in 1926 he formally published what became his most famous theoretical statement. He called it the 5 points of a new architecture. The first point was pilotus. Buildings should stand on slender columns, lifting the main body of the structure off the ground entirely. The ground level would remain open and free, allowing air, light, and people to move through unobstructed. The building would float above the earth rather than sitting heavily upon it. The second point was the roof garden. Traditional rooftops were dead, wasted surfaces. Le Corbusier insisted they should become gardens. Living green space on the roof would compensate for the natural ground the building had displaced. It would give residents access to open air and sunlight at the very top of the structure. The third point was the free plan. Because the columns alone bore the structural load, the interior walls carried nothing. They could be arranged in any configuration the architect or inhabitant desired. Walls could be curved, angled, positioned anywhere or nowhere. Interior spaces could flow into each other freely. The floor plan was liberated from the tyranny of structural necessity. The fourth point was the horizontal window. With the facade freed from load-bearing duties, windows could stretch in long horizontal bands across the entire width of the building. These ribbon windows flooded the interior with daylight and gave occupants panoramic views of the landscape that vertical windows could never achieve. The fifth point was the free facade. The exterior wall of the building could be designed entirely independently of the structure behind it. The architect had complete creative freedom on the outside skin of the building, unencumbered by any structural demands. These 5 points became the grammar of modern architecture. Architects around the world learned them, applied them, adapted them, and argued about them. They continue to define the visual language of buildings constructed today, nearly a century after Le Corbusier first articulated them. Now, theory is one thing. But built works are where ideas meet reality. And Le Corbusier built some truly remarkable things. Between 1928 and 1931, he designed and built the Villa Savoye near the town of Poissy, just outside Paris. This single building is perhaps the clearest physical demonstration of his 5 points ever realized. A white cubic form hovers on a ring of slender pilotis, seemingly weightless above a meadow. Horizontal ribbon windows wrap continuously around the exterior. The roof carries a sheltered garden terrace. Inside, a gently spiraling ramp draws visitors upward through the levels, revealing the spaces of the house gradually, almost cinematically. The ramp is one of the most brilliant features of the design. In most buildings, you move between floors in a stairwell that is separated from the main living spaces. You go through a door, climb the stairs, go through another door, and arrive somewhere. The sequence is purely functional. At the Villa Savoye, the ramp is the center of the experience. You walk up it and the spaces of the house unfold around you, changing as you move, offering new perspectives and new relationships between inside and outside. It is architecture experienced not as a static object but as a journey through space and light. Every element of the 5 points appears here in its most refined and confident form. The Villa Savoye went on to become one of the most studied and photographed buildings of the 20th century. Architecture students make pilgrimages to Poissy to stand inside it the way art students visit the Louvre. It is now a protected historic monument and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. When you visit, you find yourself moving slowly through the rooms, almost reluctant to leave. Not because it is comfortable in the way of a cozy home, but because it makes you feel that space itself is something alive and full of possibility. But designing beautiful individual houses was never enough for Le Corbusier. He had ambitions at an entirely different scale. He wanted to redesign the city itself. In 1925, he unveiled a proposal that genuinely shocked the world. He called it the Plan Voisin, named after the automobile manufacturer who partly sponsored the exhibition where it was displayed. The plan was breathtaking in its radicalism. He proposed demolishing most of the historic medieval and 19th century neighborhoods on the right bank of the Seine in Paris, covering an area of roughly 600 acres in the heart of the city. In their place, he would erect 18 identical cross-shaped towers, each rising 60 stories into the sky. The towers would be spaced far apart, surrounded by vast parks and open green space. Roads would be wide, straight, and fast. Pedestrians and vehicles would move on entirely separate levels, never crossing their separate paths. The density of the existing neighborhoods would be maintained, but compressed vertically into the towers. The ground, finally liberated from the clutter of buildings, would become a continuous landscape of parkland. The reaction was explosive and almost universally hostile. Critics accused him of wanting to bulldoze history, of treating Paris like a factory floor to be optimized for efficiency, of having no understanding of what a city actually meant to the people who lived in it, of cultural vandalism on an unimaginable scale. Le Corbusier responded with characteristic confidence. He insisted that modern cities had to be rational, healthy, and efficient. That the overcrowded, dark, poorly ventilated streets of old Paris were killing their inhabitants. That he was offering people something better: sunlight, open air, greenery, speed, and order. The Plan Voisin was never built, of course. But the confrontation it provoked defined the public persona of Le Corbusier for the rest of his life. He was the man who wanted to tear down the past. Or he was the man brave enough to imagine a radically better future. It depended entirely on who you asked. After World War II, Europe faced an urgent housing crisis. Cities had been bombed. Populations had been displaced. Millions of working-class families needed decent homes, and they needed them quickly. Governments across the continent turned to architecture for solutions. And many of them turned to Le Corbusier. He responded with what he considered his most ambitious social experiment, the Unite D habitation in Marseille, completed in 1952. This was not just a housing block. It was a vertical city. 17 stories tall, nearly 140 meters long, it housed 337 families in 23 different apartment types. Each unit ran all the way through the building, from one side to the other, with windows on both facades. Every apartment was 2 stories tall internally, like a small house stacked inside the block. On the 7th and 8th floors, Le Corbusier inserted an interior street of shops, a hotel, a restaurant, a pharmacy, and other services. Residents could buy bread, get a haircut, or have coffee without ever leaving the building. The rooftop was an extraordinary communal landscape, a running track, a paddling pool, a gymnasium, a nursery, and a small theater, all open to the sky above Marseille. Le Corbusier called it a machine for living in, and he meant it as a compliment. A precision instrument designed to give working people everything they needed for a dignified and comfortable life. In many ways, the Marseille Unite was genuinely successful. It is still inhabited today. It has become a beloved landmark. Its residents are fiercely proud of it. Architects from around the world come to visit, run on the rooftop track, and stay in the small hotel. But the story of what happened when this idea was copied at massive scale is a far darker one. Governments saw the Unite dehabitation and understood one thing: you could house a lot of people in a tall building on a small footprint. They missed everything else. They built towers without the interior streets, without the rooftop amenities, without the careful proportioning, without the social infrastructure, without adequate management or maintenance. And they built them not for mixed-income communities, but specifically to warehouse the poor. The result, across Britain, France, the United States, and many other countries, was catastrophic. These buildings became synonymous with poverty, crime, and despair. In 1972, the Pruitt-Igoe housing project in St. Louis, Missouri, was demolished with explosives just 16 years after it was built. It had been designed according to the same modernist principles Le Corbusier had championed. Its demolition was broadcast on television and was widely described as the symbolic death of modernist architecture. Was this the fault of Le Corbusier? The answer is complicated. The buildings that failed were crude imitations that had stripped away everything that made the Marseille Unite work. He never advocated for poorly built, under-resourced housing dumped in isolated locations without services. But he was also not entirely innocent. He had promoted his ideas with missionary zeal. He had insisted they were universally applicable. He had not built in enough caution about the ways his ideas could be misused. When a powerful idea enters the world, its creator cannot always control what is done with it. That is one of the great dangers of visionary thinking. Now let me tell you about the grandest experiment of his career. In 1950, newly independent India needed a new capital city for the state of Punjab after the partition that had left the old capital, Lahore, inside Pakistan. The first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, saw this as an opportunity to build a city that embodied the aspirations of a modern, forward-looking nation. He invited Le Corbusier to design it. For Le Corbusier, it was a dream commission. A blank canvas. An entire city to design from scratch. No history to preserve. No existing structure to work around. Just land, vision, and the opportunity to build a complete urban environment according to his principles. The city was called Chandigarh. Le Corbusier designed its street network, laid out its sectors, and designed the capital complex at its head, the High Court, the Secretariat, and the Legislative Assembly. These buildings are among the most powerful works of his entire career. They use raw concrete with brutal confidence. Vast, sculptural, almost geological in their weight and presence. The roof of the High Court is an enormous curved concrete parasol that shades the building from the fierce Punjab sun. The Assembly building is topped by a hyperbolic cooling tower that looks like something from another planet. In 2016, these buildings were inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage list as part of the larger recognition of his work across 7 countries. Chandigarh today is a thriving, prosperous city with a population of well over 1 million people. It consistently ranks among the cleanest and most livable cities in India. Its wide tree-lined boulevards, its parks, and its systematic planning have created an urban environment that genuinely serves its residents well in many respects. The Rose Garden, one of the largest in Asia, draws visitors from across the country. The Rock Garden, a sprawling outsider art installation created by a government road inspector named Nek Chand from discarded materials, has become one of the most visited sites in the entire country. It is a wonderful irony. The most beloved landmark in the planned city of Le Corbusier is something utterly spontaneous, unofficial, and outside any plan whatsoever. Perhaps that tells us something important about the limits of even the most brilliant urban design. But life in Chandigarh has always been a complicated story. The city works efficiently as an administrative capital. Its streets are wide, clean, and well maintained. Crime is relatively low. Green space is abundant. By many measures it is one of the most livable cities in India. But residents and critics have pointed to what is missing. The wide streets are designed for cars, not for pedestrians in a hot climate. The sectors are large and the distances between destinations are long. The city lacks the density and variety of the organic Indian city, where commerce, residence, worship, and social life are woven together in an intricate, improvised fabric. Chandigarh can feel planned, controlled, and somehow incomplete. As if a brilliant diagram of a city has been built, but the messy, unpredictable human energy that makes a city truly live has not yet arrived. This tension cuts to the heart of the most persistent criticism of the entire body of work of Le Corbusier. He loved the view from above, the aerial perspective, the rational plan, the beautiful diagram. But he sometimes struggled to understand the view from the ground. The perspective of the person walking to the market on a hot afternoon. The child looking for somewhere to play. The elderly neighbor who needs a bench and a familiar face. The shopkeeper who depends on passing foot traffic. The American urban thinker Jane Jacobs articulated this critique with devastating clarity in her book titled The Death and Life of Great American Cities, published in 1961. Jacobs was not an architect or a planner. She was a journalist and activist who had spent years watching what happened to the neighborhoods she loved when planners decided to improve them. She had seen streets she knew to be vibrant and safe described by planners as slums and marked for demolition. She had seen residents displaced into the very kind of tower blocks that Le Corbusier had championed. And she had watched those tower blocks fail to provide anything resembling the community life that the old neighborhoods had sustained effortlessly. Jacobs argued that the life of a city depended on the mixing of uses, the presence of buildings of different ages and costs, high density, and short city blocks that encouraged walking and chance encounters. The modernist city, with its towers and parkland and its strictly separated zones for living, working, shopping, and recreation, destroyed precisely the conditions that made urban life rich and meaningful. She wrote with wit, passion, and extraordinary observational precision, and her book changed the way a generation of planners and architects thought about cities. Le Corbusier and Jane Jacobs have come to represent two opposing poles in the ongoing argument about what cities should be. He believed in the power of the planned environment to elevate human life. She believed that the spontaneous, unplanned complexity of the organic city was irreplaceable. Both of them were right about something important. And neither of them was entirely right. The best cities we have today are the ones that have found ways to hold both truths simultaneously, planned enough to be livable, and free enough to be surprising. Now let us turn to Le Corbusier the person, beyond the buildings and the theories. He was a man of enormous and restless productivity. Over the course of his life he created more than 10,000 paintings and drawings. He was a serious and committed painter from his early 20s until the end of his life, producing work every morning in his studio before turning to architecture. He was deeply influenced by Cubism and by his friendship with Amadeo Ozenfant, with whom he developed a movement called Purism. Purism was a reaction against what they saw as the decorative excess of late Cubism. It sought instead a strict simplification of form, reducing everyday objects like bottles, guitars, and books to their most essential geometric shapes. These paintings have a serene, controlled beauty that is quite different from the raw power of his architecture. But they share the same underlying sensibility, a belief in the primacy of pure form, and a conviction that beauty emerged from clarity and proportion rather than from decoration. He also designed furniture that remains in production today. The chaise longue he designed with Charlotte Perriand and Pierre Jeanneret in 1928 is one of the most iconic objects of the 20th century. Its sinuous steel frame supports the body in a position of complete relaxation. It is both a piece of sculpture and a supremely functional object. It can be found in museums, offices, homes, and waiting rooms around the world. The collaboration with Charlotte Perriand deserves particular mention. Perriand was a young designer who came to work in his studio and brought with her a deep understanding of how people actually used furniture in everyday life. She was in many ways responsible for the warmth and human sensitivity that made their furniture designs so enduring. Le Corbusier initially refused to hire her when she first applied, famously telling her that women did not embroider cushions in his studio. She responded by arranging her own furniture in the salon at that year in the design exposition, and the result was so compelling that he changed his mind immediately and invited her to join. It is a story that reveals both the limitations and the occasional capacity for growth in this complex and sometimes infuriating man. Le Corbusier insisted that furniture, like buildings, should serve the body honestly and efficiently, without pretension or unnecessary ornament. A chair was a machine for sitting in. A table was a machine for working at. But when these machines were designed with enough intelligence and care, they became objects of genuine beauty. That paradox, the beauty that emerges from pure function honestly pursued, is at the heart of everything Le Corbusier tried to do. He was also a writer of fierce intelligence and considerable literary talent. He wrote dozens of books and hundreds of articles throughout his career. His most famous book, published in 1923 and known in English as Toward an Architecture, remains one of the most influential texts in the history of architecture. In it he made a famous declaration: architecture or revolution. Revolution can be avoided. He believed, with genuine passion, that better designed cities and buildings could address the social inequalities that drove political upheaval. Give people decent homes, he argued, and they will not need to revolt. It was a utopian vision, and like all utopian visions it contained the seeds of both inspiration and danger. His personal life was marked by deep feeling and long periods of separation. He married Yvonne Gallies in 1930, a woman he had known for years and loved with quiet devotion. She had been a Monaco fashion model before they met, and she brought warmth and humor to a man who could sometimes be austere and remote in his public persona. They had no children, but their life together was close and affectionate. The difficulty was that Le Corbusier spent enormous amounts of time traveling, to India for Chandigarh, to various European cities for commissions, to lecture and write and argue and design. Yvonne often stayed behind in Paris, and the separations wore on her. She became ill in the later years of their marriage, and she died in 1957. Le Corbusier was devastated. After her death, friends noticed that he became quieter and more withdrawn. He continued to work with undiminished intensity, but something in him had gone quiet. He built himself a tiny retreat on the Mediterranean coast at Roquebrune-Cap-Martin, a small wooden cabin just 4 meters by 4 meters that he called Le Cabanon. It was a remarkable object, the most famous architect in the world living in a hut not much bigger than a prison cell. But the cabin was ingeniously designed, with every centimeter of space used with precision according to his modular system of proportions based on the human body. The modular was one of his later obsessions. He spent years developing a system of measurement based on the proportions of a 6-foot-tall man with arm raised, combining the Fibonacci sequence with the golden ratio to create a series of dimensions that he believed were inherently harmonious to the human body. He applied the modular to the Unite D habitation in Marseille and to many of his later buildings. Whether it actually made those buildings feel better to inhabit is a matter of considerable debate among architects and researchers. But the project itself reveals something important about Le Corbusier. He was never satisfied with intuition alone. He always wanted a system, a rational foundation, a set of principles that could be universally applied. This hunger for underlying order, for the hidden mathematics of beauty, drove him throughout his career. It was his greatest strength and, perhaps, one of the sources of his blindness to the irreducible messiness of actual human life. He loved the sea, and every morning when he was there he would swim in the Mediterranean. On August 27, 1965, he went for his morning swim. He was 77 years old. He was found at the edge of the water. His heart had stopped. The French government gave him a state funeral. His body lay in state in the courtyard of the Louvre. Architects, politicians, and ordinary people came to pay their respects. He was buried beside Yvonne in a tomb of his own design, overlooking the Mediterranean he had loved so much. It was a fitting end for a man who had spent his entire life trying to bring human beings closer to light, air, and the beauty of the natural world. How do we see Le Corbusier today, more than 60 years after his death? The scale of his official recognition is extraordinary. In 2016, 17 of his works across 7 countries were inscribed together on the UNESCO World Heritage list, in France, India, Japan, Argentina, Belgium, Germany, and Switzerland. It was an unprecedented recognition for a single architect. The citation praised what it called the outstanding contribution of Le Corbusier to the modern movement. And yet the controversies have not faded. His contacts with the Vichy regime during World War II have been thoroughly documented and debated. He spent several years trying to win commissions from the collaborationist French government, and submitted urban planning proposals that the regime ultimately rejected. He eventually withdrew from this collaboration, but the episode raises uncomfortable questions about the relationship between artistic ambition and political judgment. Can we admire the work of a man who compromised himself in this way? Most people conclude that we can, and must, while holding both truths simultaneously. His influence on urban design has also been subject to sustained and serious critique. The high-rise housing disasters of the post-war decades are part of his legacy, even if he was not personally responsible for the worst of them. The car-dominated city, the tower in the park, the housing estate separated from the rest of the city by motorways and wastelands. These are the darkest shadows of his vision. And yet, walk through almost any city in the world today. Look at the buildings. Look at how they stand. Look at the windows. Look at the rooftops. The fingerprints of Le Corbusier are everywhere. Not because his ideas were imposed, but because many of them were genuinely good ideas that solved real problems. Buildings that let in light. Buildings that stand on columns so the ground can breathe. Buildings that use space honestly and efficiently. These were real contributions to human well-being, not just aesthetic preferences. The deepest truth about Le Corbusier may be this. He showed us, with unusual clarity, both the power and the limits of the idea that a single mind can design the good life for other people. He was a man of extraordinary vision and genuine compassion who sometimes forgot that the people he was designing for had their own visions and their own ideas about what made life worth living. He was a utopian who believed so strongly in his own utopia that he occasionally forgot to ask whether other people shared it. He said a house is a machine for living in. But human beings are not merely users of machines. We are inhabitants with histories and desires and contradictions. We live in spaces. We love in spaces. We grieve in spaces. We find meaning in the unexpected corner, the imperfect street, the neighbor who waves from a window. These things cannot be designed. They can only be allowed to happen. The city Le Corbusier imagined was rational, healthy, efficient, and beautiful. The city that actually sustains human life is all of those things, and also messy, contradictory, surprising, and stubbornly resistant to any single vision of perfection. His greatest gift to us may not be the buildings themselves. It may be the argument he started. The argument about what a city is for. About who it belongs to. About what we owe each other when we share a piece of the earth. That argument is still unresolved. It will probably never be fully resolved. But every generation that takes it seriously is doing exactly what Le Corbusier would have wanted. Thinking hard about how to build a better world. There is something both humbling and inspiring about the story of Le Corbusier. Here was a man who grew up in a small Swiss watchmaking town with no formal training in architecture. Who educated himself through travel and relentless observation. Who developed ideas so powerful that they reshaped the physical environment of human civilization. And who, in doing so, created both enormous beauty and serious harm. He reminds us that vision without humility can be dangerous. That even the most passionate commitment to improving human life can go badly wrong when it does not listen to the people it is trying to help. But he also reminds us that the world genuinely needs people who dare to think at the scale of cities, who refuse to accept that things cannot be better, and who are willing to put their ideas on the line. The cities we live in today are the accumulated result of thousands of decisions made by thousands of people over hundreds of years. Le Corbusier made some of the most consequential of those decisions. Understanding him means understanding something essential about the world we have inherited. And asking, as each generation must, what kind of world we want to build next. Thank you for thinking through these important questions with Jenny today. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend. See you next time.